Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Rowell and François.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Send podcast. It's a wonderful day because we're going to talk about the new certifications from Cisco and the changes that came out of Cisco Live. But before we talk about that, I'm here with our co-host, Francois. How are you doing?
I'm really good, Rowell. How are you?
I'm doing well. I think I'm still recovering from traveling to Cisco Live and spending time there. It's even though it's the same time zone for me, it just feels kind of weird.
I think I was pretty good. I was maybe tired the next day, but then I had to go back to work really quick. So
yeah, you had to get back into the swing of things. I took a mini vacation in San Diego and was able to enjoy the perfect weather out there. It wasn't too hot or too cold from what I remember, but I thought it was pretty fun being out there in San Diego. What do you think?
Yeah, it was really good. It was my first time over there, so I really enjoyed it, and that was my second time in California, so nice. It was pretty nice. I liked it.
Cool. Some of the things that we've been working on, I guess, before we get to the certifications, I mean, we've been trying to catch up with a lot of things regarding Cisco because of everything that's new, that's coming out, and all the announcements from Cisco Live. And one of those has been dealing with the Catalyst 9800 and specifically the cloud version. And you came out with a blog post, Francois, talking about setting it up, the Catalyst 9800 controller on your laptop. And I just want to ask you we can send people to your blog post. We'll have a link in the show notes, but what were your thoughts on setting it up on your laptop?
So for me, because I'm not really, like a VM guy or a system guy like you, it wasn't easy for me. I had to, and it wasn't straightforward as well. So when I went through the process, I'm like, man, this is not straightforward. So I need to write about it. So that's kind of why I wanted to do the blog article. And then, the process of writing the blog article I had to go through installing it multiple times in order to nail it down and document it. So I actually did it the first time maybe 3 weeks ago. And then this week, I took the time to redo it a couple more times to document it and just go through the process again. And for me, the trickiest part was to configure the VM, the VMware, the VM itself, right? Especially the network configurations to make the whole controller work.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my experience pretty much.
And I went through the same experience, except for my blog post, I wrote it up on installing it in VMware ESXi, and that's the free version of VMware. And Cisco does provide you with an OVA file, which you can use. It's a template file that you could import into VMware. So it's a different process from what you had to go through, Francois, because you used VMware Fusion, correct?
Yes. I wanted to have it on my laptop because I wanted to be able to just travel with the AP, and then I have a small PoE switch, and so I can just connect it to my laptop and then have the controller up and running, and then do my testing directly on the go.
Mm, gotcha. Yeah, and for obviously, if you have it in VMware, it's not as portable as having it on your laptop, but very different steps that I had to go through. I had to use a tool to import the OVA file. I think you were using an ISO. And so with the OVA file, there's a little bit more steps involved when it comes to importing that VM into VMware. But then once it's up and running, it's like another controller, right? Even when you have yours running, it's very similar to accessing a physical controller.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. After that, you can SSH into it, you can HTTPS into it, and just use it as a normal controller.
Cool. So for everyone out there, Francois and I wrote up our own blog posts. We have that over in the show notes if you go to cleartosend.net/176 if you're interested, because you can go out there and download the cloud controller. You are just limited with the trial license, and then it expires, and then you'll have to reinstall it again. But we wrote out our steps on how you can get that up and running. For my post, I wrote down what kind of hardware I was using as well, because I installed it on an Intel NUC and have VMware on there. You do need a little bit of VMware experience because you have to set up your networks on your vSwitch, and then have the right network configuration, just so the different networks you set up for your controller are accessible. So head over to the show notes for that. And we did have a question from Gideon about the use cases for the Catalyst 9800 in the cloud, because that's something we haven't even tried out yet, which you can install in AWS, for example.
Yeah, so that's I found it was a good idea. Good question, sorry. And so that's why we're talking about it right now. Some good cases, I guess, would be to if you like if you I was going to say, yeah, if you have remote workers, people that work from home, you could set up some remote APs. You could send them some remote APs that connect back to your controller in the cloud, and then they get access to all the same SSIDs that the one they would have at the office. So you get like secured access to your corporate network through that connections. That's a cool use case. Rowell, you're thinking about another one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of them. I think the biggest one is since everyone's going to the cloud, and maybe excuse me, you have a cloud infrastructure in AWS, then you don't need an on-prem controller, right? You don't have a physical controller on site, and you could utilize your existing AWS infrastructure and also utilize the benefits of using AWS, right? So you have a lot of more redundancy up there in AWS. You can move it to different. I mean, I'm not an AWS expert. Different.
Well, you don't have to worry about hardware. It's scalable. Yeah. All the advantage of the cloud, pretty much.
Yeah, and then once it's in the cloud, then you have possibly an MSP solution, right? So a service provider type solution where you have different clients that are using Cisco APs, and you could have those associate to the controller in AWS, and then use your as we'll in a future episode talk about this, like tags and policies and whatnot to separate those APs. But I'm not really sure if the multi-tenant portion of the controller is quite there yet. But to me, that seems like a very good use case of having a 9800 in the cloud. Yes,
especially if you have a lot of small customer or a lot of small remote sites. I think it'd be a good solution for that. And then as well, another use case could be lab scenarios, lab environment. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a lab always accessible for your team or for yourself, even if you're traveling a lot, you can just travel with your AP, and then you have the lab available anywhere you go to do your testing, or even to teach. If you're teaching some people, you can have the controller in the cloud, and then all the students, connect back to the controller in the cloud, and then all you have to do is carry a few APs around.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great way to have a lab environment because of the constraints of having a lab to work with a 9800. Because if you look at the actual hardware appliances from Cisco, they're not an inexpensive solution, right? So if you want a 9800 40 or 9880, you're talking about dropping a lot of money to have that on site. So I think I mean, that's pretty much all we had for like the news in the beginning of this episode. We just wanted to share that we're working on a lot of content regarding the 9800 controller because it is so different from what we're using now, right, with AirOS. And we plan on releasing a lot more episodes and also some other content that won't be on the podcast regarding the 9800. So now we're going to move on to the new Cisco certification. So if you weren't paying attention to Cisco Live, in the keynote, Monday's keynote, at the very end, they quickly talked about changes to the new certification suite of certifications, all of them across the board, and then the addition of new certifications from the DevNet side. So what we're seeing here are Cisco's making a big change. Things are evolving, and by evolving, I mean they're making the change on the network engineer, right? What does the network engineer need to know today and moving forward in order to provide solutions to, wherever you are as a certified Cisco engineer. And so they're moving more towards their intent-based networking. That's the messaging that Cisco has been using for the last couple of years now, ever since 3-4 years ago. And so they're driving more change into like APIs and programmability with this introduction of DevNet certifications. And then there's the changes to the certifications like the CCNA all the way up to the CCIE. And so I think everyone's first thought is, wow, there's going to be this is a huge change. But then the second question, the other question that comes to mind is, what do I do with my existing certifications, or what happens if I'm studying for a certification right now? What does that mean? Right?
Yeah. How is it affecting me?
Yeah. So how does it affect you and your studies, and what happens to your existing certifications, right? I have CCNA Wireless or CCNA Security. What does that mean?
All right. So let's talk about that. And then, talking about that, we try to focus on the wireless track. Since this is what we do, so we detailed the new wireless track a little bit more in details for you guys. So let's just do it, level by level. I guess we could start with the CCNA.
Yeah. So the CCNA, I saw this on the Cisco certification site. What they're trying to do with CCNA is cover 80% of that as networking skills, and 20% is software skills. So I think that's a huge shift because 20% is quite a big jump in software skills. But then just to quickly note that the DevNet certifications, they cover 80% software and 20% networking. So just keep that in mind as we talk about the CCNA or all the Cisco certs.
Yeah, because we'll still have the Cisco certs as we know them, like the CCNA, CCNP, CCIE. They just updated them, and then like you said, they added a separate track for the DevNet side of things, and so the equivalent of the CCNA on the DevNet track would be called the DevNet Associate, and that's the one you're talking about right now. That's saying that the DevNet Associate will be 80% software and 20% networking. And then the CCNA, it's pretty much reverse, would be 80% networking and 20% software.
Yeah, and it's a good. They both look like good certifications, but it's not that DevNet kind of replaces any of the certifications. It's just a whole new track.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole new track, focusing on automation and programmability. So if we go back to the CCNA as we know it today, you have, the CCNA, and then you have different specialties: CCNA Wireless, CCNA Security, CCNA Data Center, and so on. So this will be removed for the new certification program. So you won't have CCNA Wireless anymore. You'll just have the one CCNA, and then they changed the content of the CCNA to include some of the wireless fundamentals. So if you look at the exam topics for the new CCNA, you'll see that under the section called Network Access, they're talking about comparing Cisco wireless architectures and AP modes. They're talking about describing physical infrastructure connections of a WLAN component. So, AP, wireless LAN controllers, access trunk ports, and lag. And they're also talking about describing AP and WLC management access connections, as well as configuring the component of a wireless LAN access for clients via the GUI. And then here they're talking about, creating SSID, configuring the security settings, QoS settings, and some of the advanced WLAN settings.
I like that it's integrated now into the CCNA, because wireless is such a, everyone uses wireless, so it's very important to know wireless. But then I think where people have questions is, okay, like for me and you, we have a CCNA Wireless. Does that mean we're no longer certified in CCNA Wireless? But that's actually not the case. So even though the certification for the specialized ones won't be there, for those that have that specialization certification, you will get a training badge under the new certification era. So if you have a CCNA, you have your CCNA, but then you now have this training badge for CCNA Wireless. And so that's the difference moving forward, which all of this happens in February 24th, 2020.
Yeah, so you get your new CCNA, and then you get a little fancy badge that says wireless or security, whatever you have. So so that's for the wireless and the CCNA. They also included some security fundamentals, and I found it interesting. They talked about WPA, WPA2, and WPA3. So, which is nice. So that's kind of like the basic of how to configure a wireless network in the Cisco environment, I guess. I didn't see anything really related to RF fundamentals and all of that.
Which
but
is
I
because
guess
they're in a
to
different
make
exam.
Choice, right?
There is these specialist exams, which that's where you get all those details.
Yeah. So I guess that's going to be at the CCNP level and not at the CCNA level, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense, because that is more of an advanced topic. Not everyone needs to understand wireless at an RF level or even need to design at that level, because usually there's going to be people dedicated to that, or that gets outsourced to somebody else that really has that expertise.
Yeah, and then CCNA, it's really for like the entry level, junior guy or girl. Sorry. They're just entering the workspace. So I don't think it's aimed for. They want to introduce everything and tease on every part of the network infrastructure, and then after that, the students decide where they want to go based on what they like.
Yeah, exactly. So the new CCNA is just consolidated down, and that is the certification to start off with. So if you have your CCNA, you keep it, and then if you have a CCNA Wireless, for example, you keep that as a specialization, but you're going to receive a training badge for that technology area in the new year, in February 24, 2020. That's when you'll get that training badge as they move on to this new certification, all these new changes. So now if we talk about for wireless specifically, talking about, okay, what are the other tracks, or what are the other certifications that are just related to wireless? Because there's no longer this idea of CCNP Wireless, for example, right? Where there were 4 exams. There's 4, right, Francois? I know you've taken them all. There's 4. There were 4 exams currently, and so that's all changed. It's different now.
Yeah. So now, if you want to become CCNP Wireless, as we call it today, you'll have to first do the, I guess you don't have to do it first, but you have to pass the core, the
Enterprise core exam.
Yeah, we have to be precise here. So you have to pass the enterprise core. So I forgot the name. Oh, sorry, already.
Yeah, it's just enterprise core.
Okay, enterprise core CCNP exam, and then that includes. It's kind of like it's not focused on wireless, so it's more like routing and switching, right? From what I understood. And then once you pass these core exams, you'll be CCNP. And then after that, you can go the extra step and then go through the wireless specific certifications, and they have 2 of them in order to be CCNP wireless, I guess.
Yeah, so that's the big difference here is the wireless concentration under the CCNP is consolidated down from 4 exams to 2. You do need the CCNP Enterprise Core, but then there's only 2 wireless specific exams after that for CCNP. And so those ones are the Enterprise Wireless Design. It's the 300-425 Enterprise Wireless Design, and the 300-430 Enterprise Wireless Implementation. So I like what they've done there, because design is a big piece, and then of course implementing it. And so from that, from what you can hear there, the design obviously focuses on things like the site surveys, collecting requirements, understanding restraints, determining things like POE budgets, and designing for requirements. There's also high density, mobility, and high availability. And then wireless implementation focuses on the actual configuration of the Cisco wireless network. So things like Flex Connect, QoS, location services, security. And by security, they're going to talk about ICE portals, which is on the objectives there, even though I don't think portals are really a security thing. Then there's 802.1x, AAA. And then, of course, they're going to sneak in some DNA center there for monitoring, and Prime is still very much part of the certification as well. And also some device hardening. Yeah.
So I think I like those the way of doing it as well. I think I made a mistake. I think if you want to be CCNP, you need the core and another one. So you need at least 2 exams, right? So you need the core and then one of the 2 wireless ones if you want to, or you could select another exam from another specializations, right? Because they're going to have other specialization exam for data center, route switching, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you do need the core exam.
You need the core and one more.
Yeah, that's a required exam. And then they actually call it a concentration exam. So whichever your concentration is going to be, because so wireless is one of them, but then they have other concentrations like SD-WAN, and then there's more advanced routing and switching. So the enterprise core is more implementing and operating what they call network core technologies, which we're not going to go too far deep into what that certification really is.
So I think the key change for us Wi-Fi engineers is that, if you want to become CCNP now with the new track, you're gonna have to know the network side of things. So if you like me and you do Wi-Fi every day, you're gonna have to go back and practice a little bit more of the network stuff, because they're gonna ask you about routing, they're gonna ask you about security. They have something on network assurance. So you're gonna have to go back and study those things.
Yeah, and actually, we should also address for those that are currently studying for CCNP wireless, and you've maybe taken an exam like Y Design or Y Deploy. We can talk about what that means for you, because when these new certifications come out, like if you pass any of the CCNP wireless exams prior to February 24th, 2020, you will actually become a Cisco certified specialist. And then it just depends which certification you have. So if you have the CCNP Y design and or the Y deploy, they give you the Cisco Certified Specialist in Enterprise Wireless Design. And then if you have maybe either the T-Shoot, the Y T-Shoot, and or the Y Secure, you are a certified specialist with Enterprise Wireless Implementation. So then if you have all four of those exams, you will get the new CCNP Enterprise Certification and the Specialist Certifications, which are the Enterprise Wireless Design and also Enterprise Wireless Implementation. So what happens if you just have partial CCNP wireless, like 2 or 3 out of the 4, and then the date passes, right? It's now February 24th or later. Well, that means you now have to take the Enterprise Core exam to get to become a CCNP. So I think that's where a lot of people might get confused. Is all right. I have the Y design. I'm currently studying for Y deploy, but there's I won't be able to finish all of those certifications before February 24th. So if that happens, then you definitely have to take the 300-401 exam, Enterprise Core, to get your CCNP.
Yeah, so if you're planning on doing this, I guess I was going to say, what's the point of still studying for the current CCNP exams? But I guess you could get the specialization,
the specialist ones,
out of them. Yeah,
for me, it's kind of like, because I was going to do the CCNP wireless, but being that I don't have any of the certifications, I might as well just wait.
Yeah, and then plus you do some networking at work too, right?
Yeah.
If you don't want to do the core, like if it was my case and I had like 2 exams out of the 4 on CCNP, I would just do the 2 last ones before.
Yeah, try to knock them
February.
all out.
Yeah, so I don't have to do the core, because that's going to be a lot of study for me.
So the interesting thing,
I already have them.
Yeah, so you already have them. You're good. If you haven't started on CCNP wireless, taking 4 exams prior to February 24th kind of seems like a tall task, especially if you got a full-time job.
And expensive too.
And yeah, it gets pricey. It could be inexpensive to just go for the Enterprise Core, and then you can take both of the concentration exams, and you could save some money there. But the caveat there is that there's no training material out for these new certifications.
Yeah.
So you'd have to...
You know what to do tomorrow.
You'd have to just look up the objectives and find everything on Cisco's site in order to study for this.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I find that's interesting with the CCNP, and I read this on the site, is the prerequisites to become CCNP. You don't need a CCNA. You need to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure you don't need a CCNA. You can just jump directly to CCNP.
Yes, you're right. You can just jump directly in CCNP. And also something that changes, it's if you pass the core exam, you're already eligible to sit the CCIE exam.
Yeah.
CCIE lab, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what's huge about the CCIE certification is, it's not that different, because to go for the CCIE, you could have just skipped all CCNA and CCNP certifications and then jumped straight to CCIE. So in a way, this is kind of the same thing. They just put the requirement for CCIE down at the CCNP level, and they called it Enterprise Core.
Yeah.
And now you're CCIE eligible. You're like almost there, right? You just need to take the lab.
Yeah. So the way it works today is that in order to become CCIE Wireless, let's say you have to write an exam that they call CCIE Wireless exam, written exam. And then after that, they give you 18 months to pass the lab exam, which is like a practical exam, and they test you on how you implement and troubleshoot Cisco wireless networks. So what they're changing for the new version of the CCIE Wireless, first of all, they renamed it into CCIE Enterprise Wireless, and there is no written exam anymore. So the way to qualify for the lab exam is to pass the CCNP Core Enterprise Core exam. And then instead of having 18 months, you actually have the full 3 year of the 3 year of the CCNP Core certifications to sit the lab. And then the lab is going to be, I don't know exactly how, what the lab will be, but I'm guessing it would be similar to what we have today. Or maybe I know for the enterprise lab, the routing and switching one, they added a piece of design into the lab to make it less, just implementation, but also a little bit of thinking, thinking about the architecture and the overall design. Mm-hmm. So they might do the same thing for the Wi-Fi track. I'm not sure.
I think and also the certification is good for 3 years. I know previously, so I've never had a CCIE, but I know that I believe people started renewing their CCIE within 2 years and then they'd have to be certified on the third year. But here, CCIE is good for 3 years. And then if you already have a CCIE Wireless prior to February 24th, 2020, you will automatically receive the new CCIE Enterprise Wireless certification.
There you go.
Yeah. And you receive the Enterprise Core certification.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I think for more details on the CCIE Wireless, there's still a few things that I would need to figure out. The timing of things is kind of interesting. So I wasn't aware, Francois, that you had 3 years to take the lab after you get Enterprise Core.
Yeah, the only thing is that, not a lot of people pass the wireless lab the first time. Mm-hmm. So if you wait at the very end of the 3 years to do the lab and then you fail, you might not have time to retake the lab before the 3 years end. So and if that happens, you're gonna have to rewrite the core, the CCNP core exam. Yeah. So it's probably not a good. It's probably not a good idea to wait until the end of the 3 years.
Yeah, I think they do not want people to wait long after. Well, I mean, it depends. Like, you can go get your Enterprise Core, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna go and take CCIE Wireless right away. But I wonder if, so let's say if you take a concentration exam, does that renew your Enterprise Core for another 3 years?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm gonna say it does, because it doesn't make sense to not renew it. But I think those are some of the questions that I have that I could not easily find on Cisco's site, because one thing we did not talk about was these learning credits that you could use to apply to your certification for recertification.
Yeah, so now, like you said earlier, all certifications at all level will be valid for 3 years.
Okay.
Right, so CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, they all be valid for 3 years, and you can use continuous learning credits.
Yeah, or they call it a continuing education program, which
continuous education program.
I think that used to apply only to the CCIE, but it's now all the way down to the CCNA, the specialist, and CCNP certifications.
Exactly. So what that means is, in order to keep your certification or recertify, you don't necessarily have to, redo an exam like it is today. What you can do is you can use your credits, right? Mm-hmm. So how many credits do you need? So you need 30 credits to recertify a CCNA. You need 80 credits to recertify a CCNP, and you need 120 credits to recertify CCIE, right? Now the question becomes, how do I get the credits?
Yeah, how do you get the credits?
So I found 4 ways you can get credits. Attending Cisco training. So if you attend official Cisco training, you'll get some credits. If you take Cisco exams, right, you'll get credits. If you attend Cisco Live, you'll get credits. And I've seen that they remove the quota on the Cisco Live credits, so you could be attending both or multiple Cisco Lives during the year, like US, Europe, whatever, Australia, and still get Cisco credits that way.
Okay.
And you can also author content.
Oh, I wonder what that means.
Yeah. So I don't have more details about the authoring content stuff. I'm guessing it's Cisco related, but I couldn't find more information. So if we have more information, we'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah, because I did find the continuing education webpage, which talks about the recertification policy, which you were spot on for the credits there. I think it's the details on the credits that we really need to get answers to in terms of, okay, what is that? Is there a document that outlines all the specifics? Because, yeah, Cisco's website just says, here's how many continuing education credits you need.
So how many, for instance, like how many credits do you get if I attend a 5-day training?
Right. And right. Which trainings are eligible for credits?
So I guess it's Cisco training.
That's my guess too. But does that mean training? If you purchase training on their Cisco Learning Store, does that count as credits?
I'm not sure. Good question.
So I think that's
I really like the idea of a continuous education credits, because first it forces you to keep studying, right? Forces you to take trainings, forces you to take exams, forces you to attend conference, exchange with people, network with people, and keep up with the technology, right? And I think it's a better way to recertify than just taking an exam every 3 years, right?
So I think people have different takes on that, but I like it as well because it keeps you up to date on what's happening, right? Because certain people maybe let something lapse, or maybe they're just not learning what's out there, and so in a way, this helps you keep your knowledge in what's available to me now as far as what kind of solutions are out there, and it's an easier way to just recertify versus just retaking an exam just to keep it active.
Yeah.
So I did find a page on the Learning Network site on Cisco Continuing Education Program, which does talk about like Cisco Live training. So if you were to, if you wanted to get credits, right now this site says you can earn a maximum of 70 credits towards the recertification cycle, and they have different credits. It's like a technical breakout, which would be those sessions that you walk into during Cisco Live. Some of those, depending on the level. So like a 1,000 level is 1 credit, 2,000 is 2 credits, and the 3,000 is 3 credits. And then there's different credits for different technical seminars, and maybe also the InstructorLed Lab. So definitely the 3,000 level sessions, labs, and seminars, those give you more credits.
You can get up to 10 credits if you attend a 8-hour InstructorLed Lab at the 3,000 level.
Yeah, so I think there's just a lot of questions there still about what counts as a credit. What are the eligible trainings for credit? And that's something that we'll just have to ask and figure out, because I think that's still up in the air. I mean, how do you feel about these certifications, Francois? Like, you're a trainer, you're Cisco certified. Do you think this is the right way or the right path that Cisco's taking?
Yeah, I think I like it. I think, the whole automation and programmability, it's really gonna, it's not the future anymore. Like, people are starting to use it more and more, and I think that network engineers should know about that. They should have those skills. So I like that they start to introduce it, especially at the entry level CCNA levels. So I really like that. And then if you look at the, we didn't talk about the details of each of the exams, but if you look into the exam topics, you'll see that, those automation topics will come back in the different sections as we move into the different exams. So they try to incorporate it in at every steps of the way. So it's consistent and it makes sense. And I'm sure they're going to test you on that at the CCIE level as well.
Yep. So what we encourage you guys to do is head over to the show notes, because we'll have some photos there that talk about the different certifications. And then we'll also show you an image of the certification paths, the new ones. And then also taking a look at the DevNet certification track, because that's something I'll start looking into as I learn more about Python and programmability. And also, we're going to put in a lot of different links that go back to the wireless specific exams, and also a migration tool that I think is very helpful, especially if you already have a certification. You can see where your current certification maps to in the new certification world next year. And then also, you can see if all the FAQs, but the migration tool, I think, is the most useful thing if you already have Cisco certifications, because you can see how that maps to the new certifications. So I encourage you to check out the show notes. There's a lot of questions still unanswered by Cisco when it comes to these new certifications. But as we get closer towards the end of the year, I think we'll start to know what that means. And I did see on Twitter that somebody was creating at least a textbook for the Enterprise Core exam. So they're already working on it. I have not heard anything specific on training for the wireless exams, but I'm sure we'll hear about that as soon as we get closer to the actual new certification date.
And also, we didn't mention it, but on the DevNet track, they're also going to have specialization exams, and you could use them to become CCNP certified as well. So you could mix and match the typical traditional track and the DevNet track.
Yeah, that's definitely something worth looking into, because on the DevNet professional side, there is a concentration on automating and programming the Cisco Enterprise side. And then there is also a concentration for Cisco, so the wireless actually applies to the enterprise side. Sorry, I thought there was a special wireless concentration, but that would fall under enterprise. So I'm not entirely sure how much wireless is involved, but just walking around the DevNet zone, there were some specific wireless use cases there when it comes to programmability. So we're looking forward to seeing what is involved. But head over to the show notes. You can see everything that we found on the Cisco wireless certifications. And if you guys have any questions, let us know, because we can try to push those up for you and try to get answers if you have any certification questions. Francois, is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, that was pretty good. If you guys have questions, we can try to follow up, and then we'll try to include all the details in the show notes, like you said, all the links, and so you guys can look at the exam topics in more detail.
Cool. Well, again, head over to show notes, cleartosend.net/176, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good week.